This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Big weekend across college football with a couple of huge games in the SEC, and who better to preview those than Collin Wilson of the Action Network? We're going to talk to him today to get his read on Kentucky at Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, and more across Week 5 in college football. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sadas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as I am each Wednesday by Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work at thepowerrank.com and find Ed on Twitter at the Power Rank. Ed, we are on to week number 5. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Still wondering about how Brian Harsin managed to not get fired last week in one of the most incredible games that I've ever seen. I turned it on, and the man lives to coach another week after Missouri misses a field goal, a chip shot field goal at the end of regulation, and then dropped the ball right before crossing the goal line in overtime that would have won. So it's just an incredible end. And I'm still not sure Brian Harsin is going to last that much longer, but I'm sure our guests will have something to say about that.
Yeah, just a very normal year for Auburn. Nothing weird has gone on this entire time. Just having a normal one, as always. The guest you alluded to is Collin Wilson. You can find him on Twitter at _Collin1 and check out all of his work at the Action Network, where he is a senior writer. Collin, I'm sure you got thoughts. Unleash them here. What you got going?
I think in the time that I've had my job at Action Network, Auburn's had like 10 head coaches. So that program, and the Brian Harsin, we're about to see him enter the transfer portal the same way we saw Hank Bachmeier enter the transfer portal. Auburn's just a mess right now. It seems like it's about this time of year where they're looking at buyouts already. I think the writing was really on the wall last year. They fired their wide receiver coach like 3 weeks into the season. Derek Mason quietly leaves town, goes to Stillwater. Nobody talks about it. So I think all those things are final. And then the offseason drama, which could not be proven, so we won't talk about it. But,
right.
I think that's a team that is quickly on their way to the bottom of the SEC West.
Yeah, we're going to talk plenty of SEC on the show for today. We're going to talk about some pretty big games. Ed, what you got?
Oh, I was just going to say, but it's interesting to me because the bottom of the SEC West could still mean a top 30 team.
Yeah, it's a low.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
He's still going to get canned, but he might have a top 30 team or whoever takes over. That's how competitive it is.
Bad vibes across the board from Auburn. Trying to, factor that in more and more. Bad vibes over at Auburn for sure. We're going to break down a couple big games across this week in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Covering the Spread podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Daily shows here each weekday. NFL preview coming up tomorrow. And we also have our NFL prop betting preview coming up on Friday. Get all those right as they're posted by subscribing to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts, and also checking out these shows on the FanDuel YouTube page. Twisted Tea and FanDuel have joined forces to bring you a one-of-a-kind contest series. Gives you a chance to compete for your share of thousands of dollars in site credit. Introducing Twisted Tea's College Football Picks, a sports betting-focused contest series that's entirely free to play. The contest is simple. Each college football game will be assigned money line, spread, and total markets with assigned points each market. All you have to do is make 6 selections based on those 3 markets and earn points for each correct selection you made. If at the end of the day your score ranks among the best in the contest, you'll be eligible for your share of site credit. Head to FanDuel.com/TwistedTeaPicks and make your picks. FanDuel.com/TwistedTeaPicks and make your picks. Again, reminder, please drink responsibly. Now, Collin, each week over on the Action Network, you put a piece up that analyzes performance and key metrics and outline what that means for that week's betting markets and kind of get the takeaways from those numbers. So I want to ask you, what are those key numbers you're focusing on, and why do you believe those are important when trying to make good college football bets?
I think the interesting thing is on Sundays, odds makers just simply adjust a power rating. They put it up on the board. They look at who their sharp players are at that book. If they respect the money, they move it. Mm-hmm. They don't go into in-depth about how is this offense actually doing and how is this defense doing. And I have said this before, like the 5 factors turned into be the Bible of college football because odds makers don't use them at all. So things like success rate, finishing drives, explosiveness, those are the most important things in college football. And I integrate them into totals. So when I look at spreads, I just don't even look at that because, like I've said, a power rating is based on the closing number. The closing number is paramount to odds makers. So you have to get your power rating close to that. But when you look at things like totals, like there's a reason Bowling Green is 4-0 to the over right now. It's because they score more than 4 points every time they cross the 40, and they allow more than 4 points every time a team crosses the 40. So those, 5 factors that have been around forever that were written at Football Study Hall, they are uber important. And if you can find a way to, have those numbers available to make your own power ratings and your own totals before the market goes and hits them, because I got news for you. A lot of sharp guys out there that have lots of big wallets, they have 2 or 3 reasons why they want to make a bet, but it's not as deep and as analytical as the 5 factors. So if you can get a leg up on that and beat the market, you're going to do pretty well.
And when are you running your numbers? So you have your own numbers for each total, for each spread. Are you getting those done Saturday night? Are you working ahead, on Fridays? How are you getting that before all that sharp money comes in?
Yeah, so my power ratings are on actionnetwork.com. Those are adjusted the second games are done. So yes, my Saturday starts at 11 a.m. It doesn't end until Hawaii's done at about 2 o'clock in the morning. But those numbers are done. They get scraped and thrown into our Action app. But then the totals, I have to wait for a number of different sources. And like I've learned how to scrape. I've learned how to use import HTML. I've learned how to access APIs and get all of that into one spot so that immediately on Sunday morning, I know everybody's seconds per play. I know what everybody's doing in the red zone versus, beyond the 40. And I could give you their profile with, I could do it in my sleep, but it's because you have to pull all these things and scrape all this data. And sometimes I'm at the mercy of when those, data sites want to actually publish their stuff. So there's one, I won't mention them by hand. They don't publish anything till Tuesday. And they have some critical information. And so I have to wait till Tuesday to actually get things like stuff rate and line yards where I actually trust it. But that's, essentially building team profiles for all of them is critical when openers come out.
Are your updates to your power ratings and your totals, are they all automated, or are you going in each game and saying, oh, well, the quarterback got hurt in the middle of the game, so I need to make this adjustment?
Yeah, the totals are all completely automated. There is nothing coming out of my brain or my hands that adjusts the totals, because to me, those are all based on tempo and how you do when you're in scoring position or what you allow when you're in scoring position. But from a power rating perspective, those are all done because of what I see in the box score, because, I'll read post-game win expectancy. And I know that SP Plus takes post-game win expectancies and adjusts a team's power rating based on that. And there's other factors that go into that too. But for me, I have to land at the closing number of where the books were. Now, even though a number I don't believe in and I don't think it's right, that is the number. That's the true number that Vegas thinks it is. And if I don't get close to that with my power ratings, then I'm going to be wrong on the following week, those two teams. And I'm going to make bad bets. So while I would love to turn the power rating aspect into like an automated thing where it just kind of spits it out like Sagarin, that's not how it works. Like if I'm not close to the odds makers, I'm going to be wrong. And I'm going to make bad bets.
Yeah. That's all super interesting. Like how involved you have to be with that process to make sure you are getting the correct number, because it's that's a lot of work across college football. So let's dive into some games here and talk about them for week number 5. Here we got Kentucky at Ole Miss. Ole Miss 6.5 point favorite here. Total is 53.5, and both these teams off to a good start. Kentucky got the win over Florida, but entering conference play here for Ole Miss. How do you see this game playing out here, Collin?
Yeah, I was pretty heavy on Tulsa last week. Tulsa 21.5. They had one of the best passing attacks in the nation, and I know everybody's going to point to schedules and stuff, but this Ole Miss team, I said this in the summer, this is not what Lane Kiffin wants. They run at a 65% clip. They're running way too much. There's not a lot of belief in what they're doing at the quarterback position to do what Matt Corral did last year, to be able to run the zone read, to be able to check the defense, to be able to throw downfield. We're not seeing a lot of that out of Ole Miss. Now, that being said, Tulsa was able to expose them in a very sleepy spot, an overhead look spot. The Ole Miss offense is going to be able to take advantage of Kentucky, because that Kentucky front right now is not stopping anybody from the rushing perspective. They're going to have success running the ball, which they do 65% of the time. Kentucky's 57th in line yards, which means when they're supposed to defend a certain, 2 or 3 yards on a running play, they're not getting it done. And so I expect the Ole Miss offensive line to have plenty of success here. And I understand why the reason the total is trickling down, because people are starting to figure out that Ole Miss is a run first team. Like we all think of highlights and DK Metcalf, grabbing things one-handed out of the air, but that's just not what they are anymore without Matt Corral. That's a huge disadvantage for Kentucky, who can't defend the run right now. And then on the other side of the ball, Kentucky's not running the ball well themselves, and that's the one place you can attack Ole Miss. Like I expect in the future teams like Arkansas to give Ole Miss all kinds of problems because they have such a heavy ground attack. But that's not what Kentucky has right now. Smoke Cavassier and Chris Rodriguez, all that. They're not getting any yards after contact. They're not having any explosive runs, and that's the big weakness from the Ole Miss defense, and it's just not going to get exposed. So I'm going to take Kentucky. I know it's the total's moved up. The total's gone down. The spread's gone up, but I still believe Ole Miss is going to cover the number.
Is it just because of that bad match that you talked about with the matchups, Kentucky not being able to exploit the key weaknesses?
Yeah, when you can't exploit the key weaknesses, you're going to have a lot of possessions by the other team, and that's just not going to work out well for Kentucky. And the reason why Kentucky was so successful against Florida is because they run a zone defense and they can always have their eyes on Anthony Richardson, and they're a good tackling team. Like that's really important when you have Louisville's and you have quarterbacks that are dual threats and out in space. You can't tackle them. If you have a really high tackle grade, like per PFF, that means you can tackle one-on-one, which PFF calls a stop. And if you don't have that, then you're going to be in trouble against a dual threat quarterback.
Awesome, Collin. Let's move on to the next game. It's your Arkansas Razorbacks hosting Alabama. Arkansas is coming off a really tough loss with the field goal attempt that doinks off the top of the field goal post. I'm sure there's something wrong with the field goal post at Jerry World, though, right? We can blame it on that. Jerry Jones. Considering something wrong with the field goal post.
Considering Jerry Jones was on the 1964 national championship team at Arkansas, you think that he would have moved that field goal post up like another 6 inches to get that field goal across? But no, it didn't work out for Cam Little. And it was just not only was that a brutal play, that whole KJ Jefferson dive, that Superman dive, there's so many things wrong with that play. First off, it was 1st and goal. Why are we running quarterback dive on 1st and goal from the 4-yard line, right? I mean, this was a Michael Jordan a slam dunk attempt here, how far he was trying to dive. And, I think that really highlights what's going on with KJ Jefferson right now. He is carrying the ball more. It's because the running back stable is a little bit more depleted than it was last year, and he's fumbling the ball a lot more. I thought the problems were going to be the loss of Treylon Burks and finding somebody on 3rd downs or just finding targets in general. His passing game has not dropped off whatsoever from a big-time throw, from a turnover worthy, from an adjusted completion. He's the same as he was last year. There has been no drop-off without Treylon Burks. But his running, he is fumbling at a higher pace than he ever has. And Pittman came out this week and said, well, that's because he's just trying to do too much, and we need to take the pressure off of him. And it helps that Dominic Johnson's in the backfield, and it's going to help Raheem Sanders. But this is a really bad team against Alabama. And I know there's stuff floating out there about how Arkansas is going to, give them a scare. Arkansas can potentially beat them. Bryce Young on the road has never won by more than 6 points against anybody in a true road game. And there's all this narrative and noise and junk out there. Let me tell you what's really going on. The Arkansas secondary is horrible. They are outside the top 100 in coverage. They are 121st in the nation in tackling. That's bottom 10. And if you can't tackle and you got Ja'Cory Brooks or Jermaine Burton coming from the slot, you're going to miss those tackles. And yes, Arkansas did get Miles Slusher back, but that's one of the 8 guys that Barry Odom is going to drop back into coverage. So if Arkansas can't defend explosive passing and they can't do one-on-one tackling, I think it goes to Saban's presser on Monday when he said, we philosophically have a way that we're going to attack defenses. This week, we thought that Vanderbilt could be beat with us if we spread them out and stretch the field. And that's exactly what happened. Well, all Saban has to do is look at that Missouri State tape where Bobby Petrino threw the ball 10 times more than he rushed the ball and had huge success doing it. And it looked like a pinball game. There were just Arkansas defenders bouncing off Missouri State wide receivers. And if Saban sees even 5 minutes of that clip, Alabama's going to come out throwing like crazy. And you would think that's going to be the plan, because if you go and look at what happened last year, Arkansas kept that game really close. Could have conceivably won that game down in Tuscaloosa and shocked everybody. But why was that? It was because Alabama ran Brian Robinson Jr. like 40 times that game. He tried to do a ground and pound against a ground and pound team. And it's not going to work here. And I know that's what Arkansas wants to do. They want to get in the trench. They want to beat you up. They want to make it a bruising game. And the only way for Alabama to avoid that is to get 2 touchdowns up early and force Arkansas and KJ Jefferson to throw into coverage. That's the game plan I would have, and Saban is much smarter than me. So I don't like this Arkansas game whatsoever. It is a huge spread. It's inflated. It should be lower. Every power rating system in the world says it should be 14 or lower. But at the same time, you have to respect the market. There's $0.00 that is making that number come back to 17. Everybody's blown through 17. The sharpest books out in Vegas are up at 18 right now. So I've seen enough from the field. I've seen enough from the market. I'm going to tuck all my Razorback stuff away, and I'm pounding this weekend.
So what's the best route for taking advantage of the bad mismatch in favor of Alabama? Is that the total? Is that a team total over? Is it the spread? What's the best route for you?
It's hefty. I think the Alabama team total, I think, is at 39.5. I mean, that's hefty. And they scored 42. Like I said last year, they went all ground and pound and scored 42. Arkansas, gave up 1 billion points to Missouri State. I don't think it's that high of a price to hit Alabama team total over 39.5, considering the pace they want to go, where they're going to attack, the fact that Arkansas is also terrible in finishing drives on defense. I think an Alabama team total is probably better than trying to sweat some sort of backdoor cover from Arkansas down by 27.
Okay, so the team total there, 39.5 for Alabama, potentially being the best route there. Take advantage of the mismatch that Collin sees. I hope for your sake, maybe not for your wallet's sake, but for your fandom's sake, that it's better than forecasted.
It's an emotional hedge, right? You always right college, right? And you're like, oh, Alabama won. I'm rich, but man, my team lost.
I'm getting paid for my sadness right now. And you know what? I can live with that. I get that for sure. Absolutely. Let's talk here about NC State at Clemson right now. Clemson, 6.5 point favorite. Total is 39.5. And when I went to your Action Network profile, Collin, I saw 16,000 unders related to weather for this weekend because Hurricane Ian is going to be in the Southeast over this weekend, and that's going to play a role most likely in this game. NC State at Clemson, total down to 39.5, and you grabbed the under when it was 45.5 earlier on this week. Yeah. But what about the other markets? How does the bad or potentially bad weather for this game impact your view of the rest of this game, total aside?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, the average gambler, would look at precipitation or just the fact that there's a storm and think that there's an under coming. And a lot of people have that misconception when it comes to snow. I think at Action Network, we put out a snow article every year. It's like the over cash is 75% of the time, and we call it a snow over. So it's like people have these misconceptions about weather. Really what's important is the wind. Mm-hmm. Anything that's above 20 to 25 miles an hour, sustained winds, is really important. Now you have to go find the cross orientation wind design of some of these stadiums. I know at Arkansas, it goes from one end zone to another end zone, but there are some where it goes across sideline to sideline. And that's going to affect passers that aren't very strong in the arm. That's going to affect the kicking game, and that's going to affect the total. And with a lot of these hurricanes, it was more of early in the week. By the way, I don't think these hurricanes ever hit on Monday. It seems like they always hit on Friday or Saturday. With these hurricanes, you got to be ahead of the forecast. And you got to be ahead of the market. And if you miss it, right? You're just going to have to deal with it. Don't take a bad number. But once you get to this point in the week, later in the week, and some of these have moved 10 points, now you go back and you actually assess the game that the market has moved, and you've got this great spot to get to try to double up here and get a nice little window. So what you have to do is ask yourself, how much is the wind and the weather going to affect it? Okay, are there going to be wind gusts over 30 miles an hour? Is there going to be a sustained wind over 20? If the answer is no, get out. And I did that this morning with a couple of games. The state of Virginia is not going to see a lot of wind. Get out of those before the market finds out. As far as NC State, Clemson, and a couple others out there, Coastal Carolina comes to mind. Now you've got to actually assess the game. And NC State Clemson is one of those games where, 40, I'm watching the number heavy, 39.5, 40, 41 is key. 38's key. If I can get to one of those, I will take an over. And why is that? It's because they're ground-based attacks. Clemson's bread and butter is DJ Uiagalelei running the ball up the gut and being a power back, doing his best KJ Jefferson impersonation. As for NC State, I think it's really bad for them because the way to attack Clemson, and Wake showed it, was to get into that secondary. So with that wind, it's going to be more of a problem for the Wolfpack to attack there. And they don't have much of a running game going on right now. And plus, I couldn't even believe this when I looked it up. NC State's tackling is 111th. And for all this love that I've even put out this summer about what Tony Gibson is doing as defensive coordinator for this Wolfpack defense, they are not tackling well whatsoever. So I think the weather plays into Clemson, but at the same time, this is one that I'm going to buy back on from the Hurricane perspective with the total, because it's a ground-based attack from Clemson. You go and you look at Coastal Carolina, what Grayson McCall does with that team. He runs the triple option on the ground. I don't care if the wind is 20. I don't care if the wind is 50. He's running a triple option on the ground. It doesn't matter. So that's another one of those games where I'm going to buy out. But like I said, if it's an air attack between two teams, it absolutely matters.
So 39.5 you think is a fair point to bite then? You're not going to hold out hope for a 38, or?
I seriously doubt it's going to get to 38.
Yeah.
I do want to come back. I think 45.5 is the number that I have. 41 is very key. Like that would be the over, that you would want to get to. But now sitting around a 39.5, I'm kind of thinking like, hey, does anybody else want to go in and drive this down a little bit further? Because I'll take every point that I can get, right?
Right.
So it's important, like as I talked about, knowing your key numbers and totals. It's also important that you have a work-life balance and don't stare at the screen all week. So you need to find a way to set up a line watcher. Yeah, I know. You have to find a way to set up a line watcher so that if a number does hit at a certain book, like you get a notification in your text. Because some of us have kids and have to go pick them up at school, and then bam, there's that 38, and I've been waiting to hit the over on that. So like I said, this week's been a lot of fun as a meteorologist, a financial analyst, all kinds of things.
Oh, I want to ask you about the weather quick, because obviously this week is unique. We don't always have hurricanes where we know super far ahead of time. At what point do you view the forecast as being sticky? Because like I start to look pretty early in the week, and most of the time it does hold, but like it can change. So when are you viewing the forecast as being actionable from your perspective?
Yeah. So for people that don't know, I live in the state of Oklahoma. The National Weather Service is right down I-44 from me. And there's a reason they're here in the state of Oklahoma, is because every tornado in the world starts in this state and through I-44. So knowing that 36 hours in advance, you're absolutely locked into whatever the forecast is, but generally 48 hours is when you can start making a determination from everything that they put out there. And most of the time they're not wrong. So you don't want to wait too long. Like I was going to wait until Thursday morning to shore these up, but considering the Hurricane Ian forecast was like, we're not going to be in the state of Virginia whatsoever on Saturday, I was like, well, I better get out of those. So 36 hours is really your last chance. 48 hours is probably good too.
Collin, does Clemson miss Brent Venables on the defense side of the ball?
There's a lot of misses. There's a lot of people missing each other right now. First off, Brent Venables misses having a linebacker like James Skowski, and Clemson misses having Brent Venables. And so I think there's a lot of things unwinding here that people may not know. Ohio State went to a sugar huddle in the college football playoff semifinal because Brent Venables and James Skowski were stealing signs, and they knew everything about every team, and they knew where to get lined up. And the reason why Brent Venables was so good is because he had a captain on the defense that could literally hear Venables bark, or he could just stare over and look at a sign and see a color or a signal or whatever, and he knew where to line everybody up.
Yeah.
And saying, Isaiah Simmons is picking things off and running them back, right? And that magic that they had at Clemson is no longer there because, I don't care. You can't replicate who Brent Venables is. He's an animal. He's an absolute animal as a person, as a coach, as everything is full, fifth gear. Now Clemson doesn't have that important linebacker to call out those plays. They don't have a defensive coordinator that can adjust on the fly. Most defensive coordinators adjust after drives. Venables was doing it mid-play. And now you see Venables, and to add on to that, Ed, Oklahoma is now severely troubled on defense. And it's because, like Venables said in his presser this week, we don't have a lot of linebackers. We have no depth at the position. So everybody's hurt a little bit by this move.
It helps having a linebacker who's been there for 17 years.
Yes.
That will aid things quite a bit in terms of all that stuff. Let's open up the board here, Collin. Of all the other games that we have for week number 5, what are your favorite bets for this week in college football?
Well, UCLA is a team that's quietly been prodding along. I don't know how there was love for Colorado in the market last week. That number just completely dumbfounded me. I know it's over 3 TDs and UCLA is coming to town, but this is still a really bad Colorado team. But UCLA had no issues there. UCLA is the kind of team that can run the ball, choke the clock, and keep the other offense off the field. And trust me, there's no problems with Kalen DeBoer and Chip Kelly knowing each other. Fresno State went down there and beat UCLA before, and I just think Chip is going to be ultra prepared for this game. Washington, in the meantime, they've done nothing to shore up this offense. They're not tackling well. They're just outscoring everybody. The defense is good enough to get them to contend for the Pac-12, but I'm not sure it's good enough to go on the road and assert themselves on other teams. I think UCLA is primed to upset this beautiful Washington run. I say beautiful because I have the over for their season win total. So I do think UCLA is going to spoil them on Friday night. The other one, I just mentioned it. I think TCU is going to have their way with Oklahoma on the offensive side of the ball. Dual threat, Adrian Martinez was asked by Kansas State head coach Kleiman to do more. I want you to run more. I want you to pass more. I want you to take over this offense, because he was real tentative. And I get in trouble at Action Network because I said I was at Big 12 Media Days, but I was at Big 12 Media Days. And I had a really long conversation with Adrian Martinez, like one-on-one. I'm like, what's the goal here? And he's like, well, we run a 21. We run two backs, a fullback. We have Deuce Vaughn, and I'm not going to be asked to do as much as I did in Nebraska. Well, you fast forward to this past weekend, and he was asked to step on the field and take lead. And whoa, did he ever, right? 4 rushing touchdowns, a passing touchdown. And I say all that because he's a dual threat quarterback. Now you're getting Max Duggan. And you go and you check the press conference, and Brent Venables is like, we don't have any answers at the linebacker position. We're extremely thin on the defense. Are you telling me that in 6 days that Oklahoma is going to be ready for another offense that is explosive on the ground? I think TCU is 6th in the nation in long rushing plays, and they've only played 3 games, and everybody else has played 4. What TCU is doing on the ground is amazing, and they're just going to tear that Oklahoma defense apart. Do I trust in the TCU defense? No, not whatsoever. Maybe the over is the best play, but if you're going to give me 6.5 points in the Frogs, then they're going to be able to keep up score for score with Dylan Gabriel in that offense.
Yeah, the total in that game is 68.5 right now. Go ahead, Ed.
That's high.
Yeah. I got a couple points for you. So first of all, I mean, how happy is Adrian Martinez to
get out of town before
to jump that sinking ship of Nebraska and to go into Norman, Oklahoma, play well? I mean, you just gotta be happy for the kid, I guess, at some level, right?
I was with my colleagues. I was with my colleague Brett McMurphy at Big 12 Media Days, and after we got done talking to Adrian Martinez, who was happy, he was nervous about coming back from injury. He did have an injury in the offseason. He was nervous about coming back off that. But Deuce Vaughn was standing there, and I said, Deuce, come on over here. Deuce, you've only fumbled once in 350 carries in your college career. Please tell Adrian how to hold on to the ball. And they both laughed. I'm glad they laughed about it. Hopefully I don't get a DM from them.
I'm glad you survived that one.
Yeah, I survived. I mean, well, Adrian Martinez is a little bit bigger than me, but Deuce was about right here. I couldn't catch him. I tried. But you know, the next week we went to Big 10 Media Days, and Scott and my whole question was it's the chicken and the egg thing. Is the Nebraska issue Adrian Martinez all these years, or is it Scott Frost? And I know that Scott Frost in Nebraska was ultra dependent on that offense being around Adrian Martinez and asking him to do more than any other quarterback in college football. But whose problem? Like, where's Nebraska? Where's the root cause of this Nebraska issue? So we went to Big 10 Media Days, and Scott Frost couldn't care less about being there. Didn't want to answer any questions. Looked like he'd been on a bender. Just no enthusiasm about the season coming up. So the theory coming in was like, I think Scott Frost is the problem, because he's not only had Adrian Martinez leave and be happy about it, but he's got Trev Albert saying, you're no longer calling the offense. It's all on Mark Whipple. Don't even try to stick your nose in that room. So turns out now we know at the end of September what the real root cause of that problem was. But yes, Adrian Martinez is a very happy quarterback right now.
Yeah, and another happy quarterback, Michael Penix. I grabbed a little bit of Heisman odds at 50-1 after that epic showing he put up against Michigan State. I've always liked the kid, and he's doing some good things out there. When
healthy, better than just about any other quarterback in the nation. The problem, Ed, is like, you know, now that I'm a first-year Heisman vote. Well, I voted for the Heisman first time last year, and so you know I hear all these things, and it's like there really is a West Coast bias. There really is a huge voting group that doesn't stay up late to watch these games, which, you know, as a person that invests in all these football games, the best action is coming after 9-10 o'clock at night, right? So that's my whole thing is like, I wish the West Coast got as much love in the trophy department as, you know, some of the guys on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, I also have a Stetson Bennett ticket, so keep that in mind as we go through this season.
Yeah, that's interesting because Stetson Bennett is setting up to keep his numbers just subpar of CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, which Bryce Young isn't going to win the award, but he's going to keep his numbers just subpar of CJ Stroud. But what Stetson Bennett does in that SEC championship game against Alabama is going to make or break the Heisman. That's it. So right now, if you're getting 16-1, 20-1, whatever's out there right now, that is a bet that you're making on Georgia making Alabama look bad. And that's a great bet. I'd rather have that than a money line. So
16-1. Yeah.
Well, no, but the insanity, I mean, I think 16, 20-1 is completely reasonable for Stetson Bennett, but that should have been what it was in the preseason.
Yes.
Not 100-1 where I got it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So,
I have a Stetson Bennett ticket too. I got it at 20-1 after week 1, right? And if you look at the schedule and the way it lines up, last year Georgia had to play Alabama during the season, so that was bad. Right. But right now now you look at after week 1, Georgia comes out. Oh, Jeff Monken says, well, we thought we were going to be a little bit worse on defense, so we thought we'd step up the tempo and be a little bit more explosive on offense. And I'm like, signals flaring off.
Right.
Get the money on Stetson.
Thank you.
Wish I'd known this before week 1, kind of one of those things. Right. But hey, we'll take it either way. 20-1 still a good number on that for sure. Absolutely. That is Collin Wilson. Check him out on Twitter at _Collin1. Check him out on the Action Network and the Action Network app as well. Collin, good luck to you in week number 5. Hopefully you get a little, you get something out of happiness out of that Arkansas game, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All righty, Ed, what's going on for you this week over at the Power Rank?
Lots of stuff. What happened? I had Chris Andrews on the podcast on the Football Analytics Show. Definitely worth checking out. He's a bookmaker over at South Point. We talked both college football and the NFL, and also working on a patron-only episode for the podcast, the Football Analytics Show. We'll be digging into some of my college football success rates. It is like literally the best time right now to kind of look at those and get some early insights into teams. And putting that together right now, should be ready in a couple of days.
I don't want to see the success rate for the Broncos, given I have their money line this week. Just don't show it to me. I'd rather not know.
Yeah, I think I want to bet that too. I haven't yet, but
it's I think the tough part is like the Raiders stink too, and I think we're kind of forgetting that.
Yeah, the Raiders were near the bottom in pass defense, which is not unexpected, given what we thought coming into the season, and signal versus noise on what we've seen from Russell Wilson, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there's the passing numbers were atrocious against San Francisco. There was a kind of funny tweet about how you could get your money back if you watched the
I saw that.
San Francisco versus Denver game. I was like, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah,
because I had Denver plus 1.5, and I did not enjoy watching myself win that bet. That was not an enjoyable experience.
No. I had the Denver money line for that one too. Moved against me, but it's
you didn't move again. Wait,
I got it at minus 106, so it was my fault. Okay. I bought it at a bad time, and it closed at plus 110. I don't know. It was something. It
should have probably come back your way a little bit, right?
It did come back a bit. It didn't close where it had gotten to, but like I still did not get the best number, and I didn't feel good about it. Like overall last week was not my best week, but one of the bets I felt worst about was one that I won, which was that Denver money line. So that's just how betting goes, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of question marks about that Denver offense. I've personally not given up on the Denver offense.
It's not great,
but yeah, it's not looking good. So
we'll see how it goes this week, but not super enthusiastic there. I forgot to ask you, do you have any bets you want to recommend for this week as well?
Oh, sure. Why not? This Texas A&M Mississippi State total is pretty interesting. I like the under. I think there's 44.5 available right now at a lot of places. And it's just one of these situations where Texas A&M's offense is so bad. The passing game is terrible. Doesn't matter if it's Haynes King or Max Johnson in there. They also just lost their top target, Nia Smith, for the rest of the season. And Texas A&M has talent, and that is showing up on the defensive side of the ball. And actually, very interestingly, Mississippi State's better unit is the defense right now, which is not really what you expect from a Mike Leach team. But that they've been really good on that side of the ball as well. So a lot of that is from these adjusted success rates that I'm looking at early this season. And they're all pointing towards the under in that game. I just looked to see if the weather is impacting that game. Not really, but I don't see a lot of points just because Texas A&M's offense is pretty inept, and Two good defenses.
Yeah. Total is 45.5 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook for that one. I appreciate you mentioning the Maryland game last week. That did I did follow you on that one. That felt good. I did not follow you on Ohio State, which I should have against Wisconsin, but we all have our own regrets. But
the Michigan Maryland game felt good because it basically happened like I thought
it was the exact way. It wasn't just that you were correct. It was that you were correct in the way it played out too.
Yeah, and we'll see. And I was pretty thrilled that Michigan gets to play at noon at Kinnick.
Yeah,
because they have seriously pooped the bed twice since I've been in Ann Arbor going to Kinnick at night.
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of horror flashbacks of Kinnick at night, like just defenders running in the open field with a turnover in their hands, like time after time after time, every single time, and it's always Kinnick at night in my head. That's Northwestern had a lot of turnovers, so it's not a shock, but still.
Yeah, I mean, there's zero math behind these statements, but it feels really bad going to Kinnick at night.
Yep, absolutely. Well, check out the Football Analytics Show. Chris Andrews, always a good listen. So I'd recommend checking that out as well. And check out Ed's work over at the Power Rank. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. We are back once again tomorrow to talk NFL Week number 4 with Ryan Williams. We'll talk to all of you then. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.